Hey, this is Mark, and this is episode 33 of the Why Are We Still Doing This podcast. And this week I'm joined by my friend and very funny stand-up comedian, Mr. Charlie Nadler. I first met Charlie about 4 years ago when we were booked on the same comedy festival together. And since then, he has had me on a number of shows here in the Berkshires. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have Charlie on was because I wanted to continue the conversation I had with my friend Seth Brown from episode 28, which was basically what needs to happen for a comedy show to be successful. Seth and I had talked about how comedy cannot just go anywhere. And in this episode with Charlie, we talk about all the things behind the scenes that the audience may not think about when it comes to attending a comedy show and how to make it a success. If you live in Western Massachusetts, specifically Berkshire County, you can see Charlie tomorrow night, Saturday, July 25th, hosting at the Adams Theater at 27 Park Street in Adams, Massachusetts. And featuring that night is Winston Hodges, who is a contestant on Kevin Hart's Funny AF on Netflix. Winston has been featured on Don't Tell Comedy, and his self-produced award-winning special Grieving Productively is available on YouTube. And you can get tickets for tomorrow's show at adamstheater.org. That's adamstheater.org. I will be there, and I'm very much looking forward to it because I don't really get out much for live comedy these days. Anyway, if you'd like to write into the show, you can do so at whyarewestilldoingthispodcast@gmail.com. whyarewestilldoingthispodcast@gmail.com. And if you like what you hear, you can support the channel by going to buymeacoffee.com/whyarewestilldoingthis. That's buymeacoffee.com/whyarewestilldoingthis, all one word. And also please follow me on TikTok at whyarewestilldoingthispc, all one word. Why are we still doing this PC on TikTok? So I hope you all enjoy this episode. And here is Charlie and I. I want to talk a little bit about the logistics of putting together like a comedy show, because I have been part of your shows. You know, I've done shows with you, and you always are really professional with how things are run, how things are presented to the audience, how things are marketed, and I really appreciate that about people that got their shit together in a way. So in terms of, you know, what do you think is the hardest thing about putting together and running a comedy show? And so, like, let's say you've got a venue, you've got to create ticket prices for, let's say, a DIY show. You've got to search out talent, you've got to market the show, you've got to deal with unruly people in the crowd. So can you walk us through what it's like for you to put this all together and for it to be successful? Because one of the things that I think we've all had experience with is comedy cannot go everywhere. Yeah. And that's something Seth Brown and I had talked about months ago. Like, what do you look for in finding a venue?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of parts to it. I think there's the like art part, and then there's the science and logistics part. And like the art part is just you can't compromise on the quality of the lineup. You have to try to book people who you think are really funny and talented, and every show has to be as good as possible. Obviously, there will be people that have off nights, and you know, I've definitely had some shows that people still bring up to me that weren't as good as some of the others. But in general, I try to really keep that very high. And what gets hard about that is there's a lot of people that reach out that want spots that I either just don't have enough spots, or I watch their tape and I don't think it rises to the level of that, you know, specific show and room. Nothing against them. It's just, you know, you also have to take into account the community. You know, we're in a rural area. It's not like New York City or LA or some of these places where the crowds might be, much more specific, and they might be a better fit for that. Um,
Yeah.
so keeping that quality high is super important for me. And then in terms of a venue, I mean, I think that's like, and I enjoyed the Seth conversation. I listened to your guys'
Thank you.
conversation. Um, I think a lot of it comes down to they have to be expecting comedy, and it has to be set up well for comedy. And there's a lot of very specific things that need to happen for a room to be good for comedy, and you kind of have to have most of them. There's some times where you can't have it all, like a high ceiling, you know what I mean? Like a theater is going to have a high ceiling, and
Mm-hmm.
that's usually not great. The laughter kind of evaporates more quickly than
Yep.
a small room. That's one of those things that's like good to not have, but it's okay if you do. But to just get super technical, like the chairs have to be really close together. You have to have like not that many tables, or if you have tables, they
Mm.
have to be really small. You can't have people far away from the stage, or else you feel that disconnect between the performer and the intimacy of the audience. You can't have an active, loud bar in the same room.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Oh,
or you just have in one ear you have the bar chatter, and then the other ear the show, whether you're the comic or
yep.
the audience member. um and then also you have to have a venue that's like respected by the community, and that has like a good base of people that come out anyways, because in a community like ours, you can't just bank on your own marketing. It has to be like, oh, I come here for dinner anyways with my family, whether it's like Bounty Fair, or like, oh, I love the beer at Bright Ideas, and the people see the poster on the door there and then get tickets. So it has to be like a collaborative approach.
Absolutely. A couple things you talked about. Not everyone is good. Not every show is going to be a home run, and
Yeah.
that sure that's a given. And I think something I've talked about. I don't know if it was with Seth, but some people go into a comedy show having their own perception of what comedy is for them. Like their idea of a comic is Bob Hope, whereas
Right.
someone else's idea of a comic is I don't know, Lisa Lampanelli. And
Yeah.
so you're not going to please everybody. But the part about I really find that fascinating about the setup with the chairs and things like that. Chairs got to be close together. There's one the show I did at Bright Ideas with you. I remember I felt like the audience. They were so close to me, and as for me at that time, I remember I hadn't done stand up in a while, and I was a little nervous, and so having those people right up on me was a little nerve wracking, as opposed to maybe 20 feet away in a auditorium where
Yeah.
the spotlight is on me. I can't see them. So, but as for the audience, I'm sure they can appreciate that being that close to the performer. So,
And
um,
also close to each other. I think like it's easier to laugh when you're shoulder to
contagious.
shoulder
Yeah,
with other people than when it's like you're these silos kind of spaced apart.
absolutely. And when regarding unruly people in the crowd, obviously there's always going to be. I've seen some clips of you, with dealing with people in the crowd, and you always nail it. I think. But what was your experience like with handling people in the crowd? Early on, did you lose your cool ever, or how did you,
Oh
you know?
yeah, and the clips you see are when it goes well.
You're not gonna post the B sides, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna post the clip where I'm like excessively mean and everyone gets feels bad for the person.
Yeah.
I think it's just a muscle that unfortunately takes a long time to strengthen, because it doesn't happen that often. I find that
Yeah.
like 100 people in the crowd is kind of that magic number where you're gonna get one who's like too drunk, or
Yep.
like maybe got dragged to the show and doesn't understand, or only watches crowd work clips and thinks they're part of the show from the beginning.
Yes.
So I think that's like I've been pretty lucky and watched the next show just be filled with drunk hecklers, but it's been a while since we've had like a really bad situation.
Yeah.
For the most part, you just have to kind of, it's like, I mean, you're a teacher. It's like you have to be like a principal. You have to like just sort of explain to them the rules and why they're not okay, and like kind of shame them without being, you can't punch down on them, or else then the
Yeah.
crowd will turn on you.
Exactly.
Uh, but you just have to kind of like try to come up with something funny to say to them and then sternly be like, don't do it again. And then sometimes you have to kick those people out. If someone's really causing an issue and disrupting the show over and over again, you give them their $15 back, whatever the ticket price is, and you tell them to have a nice night.
Have you had to do that around here in some areas?
I haven't had to kick people out, but it's gotten close enough to that bad that we've come up with that policy, that sort of like the 3 strikes, you're going home.
Now, you brought up a good point about how it's the comedy show is this big party, and I talked a little bit about that with Seth as well, because that's something I feel strongly about, in that how stand-up is perceived today. And with people who have this party-like show or this party-like atmosphere, and you see these little reels and clips of them just doing crowd work, and some people think that's their whole act. But for some people who have never been to a comedy show, and this is what they continually see, they're going to go to a show and think that's the norm. So what are your thoughts on how stand-up is sometimes presented in social media, and how sometimes there's a perception that stand-up is, an event where participation is welcome at any time? Because I feel like when I started out, it wasn't like that.
Sure. Well, I think same with me. When I started out, there was much less of a social media presence for clips in particular. It was more just like longer videos, and there wasn't this kind of attention economy now that you have with vertical video, algorithmic, whatever you want to call it. So I think part of it comes from people don't want to burn their material online. So if you're going to record an album or do a special, you're not going to put like your best bits. You're going to just put the throwaway stuff that was kind of fun. But I think we're getting to a point where people just don't even remember or don't care, because what I kind of hear now is that you can still post material and no one's going to see the special a year later and be like, he already posted that on TikTok. I can't believe he duplicated it on his recording. So I'm hoping that that'll help to change it a little bit. In general, it's like I don't like the people that have like a million rules for comedy. You know what I mean? I think funny is funny, and like if Matt Rife can build an audience with all crowd work stuff and it works and the people like to come to do that, that's fine. But to your point, like, you have to understand that that's not the norm. And I think there are people that are coming to shows because they're just a fan of the influencer and coming for like the photo line at the end instead of for a comedy show. So I think and there are some people that are incredible at crowd work. Jay Okerson, like I've seen him just do like an hour of just sort of mostly improvised stuff, and if you can do it well, there's a real art form to that as well. But people have to understand that they can't come trying to be part of the show unless they're invited to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. In a way, I'm very jealous of those people that can do crowd work that well, because when I was starting out, I would get up there and just want to plow through my material because I was scared to death. So I totally appreciate, and I've worked with some great people that have done crowd work over the years. And if they can make people laugh with that, sure, that's fine. But I think my problem was always like that was their baseline, and then they would go to any comedy show audience members and expect it to be like that, So
yeah, and I think that's just like a low information comedy fan. You know what I mean? It's like you don't go to a movie thinking every movie is going to be a horror movie, or So for me, it's like I haven't had that happen too much. It's mostly someone's just drunk and wants attention and wants to be a part of the show and thinks that they genuinely think they're adding like a fun element to the show, but they're either so inebriated or just like self-centered that they think that it's okay for them to do it.
I remember when I did the Bounty Fair show, and I was off to the side. I was eating something before the show, and it was maybe like half hour before. And all of a sudden, some guy just walks in and goes, "Hey, everybody! Eddie's here!" And everyone was like, "Who?" Like, he just got the whole place to just quiet down. And he said, I don't know if his name was Eddie, but he announced his presence. And I was like, shoot. And luckily, he set off to the side and didn't take over the show. I was like, immediately I was like, this guy's going to take over the show. I know it. But he didn't. So I was, that's something you don't want to see come through the door, I guess. But
Yeah,
so,
I remember who you're talking about, and I know his name, but I'm not going to say
oh,
it 'cause he was an asshole that night. And he did actually, a couple people did leave early who were sitting near him, and I had to give
oh,
them,
really?
yeah, I had to give them a
Oh,
couple comps for another show. That was like that was like the Mark Jagello bounce though. They were like that was like the biggest show I've ever done. I think there were like 200 and something people, like biggest
yes,
Berkshire show I've ever done. So I
yeah,
mean, it's expected that Eddie might show up to a crowd that big.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I didn't know that. I mean,
Yeah,
because
he was
for
generally okay, but he was talking too much.
yeah, even just talking, even
Yeah.
just talking. It's one thing if you're in a restaurant and there's a guy with a guitar
Yeah.
and you're talking, but comedy, you want their full attention. And I've done many shows where the bar noise bleeds into this room,
Yeah.
or whatnot. But thankfully, I've never done Applebee's, like Seth.
Yeah, Seth
So
has some hilarious stories,
yeah.
but that'll happen.
So can you talk about your very first experiences and early experiences with stand up, where it was, how bad it was, what was your material like, and what your material looks like now compared to when you started out?
Yeah, for sure. So I started in Los Angeles. I did my first open mic in 2010. It was a New
Hmm.
Year's resolution to do stand up, and I didn't fulfill it until November 17th of that year. So I like waited like, almost a full 12 months. But I went to an open mic on Hollywood Boulevard at this bar called the Pig and Whistle, which no longer exists. And you had to line up outside near the dumpster for like a couple hours before. And I remember I got there early and still ended up going almost near the end. So like it was an introduction into like, nepotism or whatever you want to call it in like open mic comedy. And by the time I got up, there were like three people left in the crowd.
Ah,
Two of them were my friends. And um, I mean, I worked a lot on the material, so I think the material was probably okay, and some of it was stuff I ended up doing for a while, and maybe even still do a couple of the things, but I'd have to look. But definitely did not do well,
yeah.
and I was taken aback by how distracting it was, like trying to
Mm.
remember where you are in your material while recognizing the audience, like that. That was very. I didn't expect to be so kind of distracted by the multitasking of that.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
also hadn't like performed much in my life, and it was not like a public speaking like most people. It was like a fear, so it was something that was definitely scary. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it went well enough that I was delusional enough to like keep trying and keep just going. And it was helpful to do it in front of people I didn't know from there on. Like I randomly had a good friend from childhood who was there, which
Yep.
I recommend for your first time doing stand up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first started out doing open mics, there was a place here in North Adams, and they had a monthly comedy open mic, and a lot of it was people I knew. So that
Yeah,
I had a great start there, but also I was so nervous. It was just f bombs left and right. But to your when you talked about how two of the people there were out of the three were your friends, you know. I was telling my daughter about how in performance I've done sold out crowds at Mass Mocha for comedy, and then I've had a band where we literally played for the sound guy one night. There
yeah,
was literally not an audience member. We literally played for the
right.
sound guy. So and so when you talked about nerves, how do you handle, so when I see you perform on your, in clips and everything, you always look super confident, and you look like someone who is constantly doing comedy every night, and that's a big part of comedy, I think, is especially if you're living in the city, you're doing it, what, 3 to 5 times a night sometimes, going
Sure.
from place to place. And I remember when I was doing comedy more, my nerves were really kept at bay. But when I'm doing comedy once every year or so, or every couple of years, the nerves are much more profound. So, do you still have that when you get up there? Because you always seem super comfortable up on stage. And the other thing is, you sometimes look like you're on the verge of cracking yourself up, which I totally love seeing comics do. Like, I love seeing comics kind of make themselves laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
Is it just the repetition? The repetition. The more time you get, the more comfortable you get. How does that work for you?
Yeah. That's a great question. And also that dovetails with the first one that I didn't fully answer that part about how it's evolved. Like, I think to me, as a comic, like I started out, and I still am, like a comedy writer and screenwriter. So I
Hmm.
started out just focusing on the written word of it and like more like monologuing the material. So like if you look at clips from my first like 10 years of doing stand up, it's really just like very still, like crafted stuff that's like fine, but there's no other layer to it. And I think at some
Sure.
point when I started to see some of my friends like get like famous or like just get success, I and also just watching, specials on Netflix or whatever, you see that three-dimensional layer that people put on top of it, whether it's like the voice work or especially the act outs and the physicality, and like really treating everything like a piece, and also like feeling the material, like putting emotion behind it,
Mm.
and almost like a method actor.
Hmm.
So that's the stuff that I've been trying to focus on in the last handful of years, that I think has gotten me to a point. And I appreciate the compliments. I mean, I have tried to intentionally get to a point where I am putting that sort of those extra layers on the stuff as much as possible. And then in terms of like the having fun and the laughing, like the nice thing about, I think the biggest thing I attribute to like becoming a better comic and a better headliner is the hosting of all the shows, because it forces me to bring new stuff. There's a lot of regulars. I don't want to repeat too much material. Like,
Yeah.
repeat a bit, but a lot of really trying to test stuff out that I've thought about a lot, and make sure that I try to think it through if it's the first or second time I've ever done it. And I think part of it, when I'm like laughing at something, it's kind of like, we all have like what's the term, like imposter syndrome about performing. And I think that sometimes I'm just so relieved that a joke worked that I'd never said before, that I laugh at
Yeah.
it. Like, oh, good, I got him with that. That like
Yes.
idea that is
Yes.
completely untested.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. It's definitely not like it. I know that some comics laugh, and even though it looks genuine, it's like part of their shtick or whatever. I don't try to put that stuff in. That's just kind of, I think, my body reacting to something.
Absolutely. It's like a emotional release of like, oh, thank God, like they laughed. But I think that's, a lot of comics will, when they're first starting out, they're maybe trying too hard, and I feel like I was trying too hard, and a lot of times when I'm on stage, the persona I'm presenting is very much like how I would be talking with some of my best friends that
Yeah,
have the same sense of humor with me. It's very genuine,
yeah,
and that's what I appreciate about your comedy is, it's like kind of, you're sort of having a dialogue with some of your best friends who have the same sense of humor, and it's just your genuine, your true self coming through. You're not trying too hard, and that's, I feel like, what makes sometimes a really successful comic. So
yeah. Well, to your point too, and to talk again about the setup of the room, like comedy really is a conversation when it's at its best. So not,
hmm
not a literal one. You don't want them responding, but it's like you're using the crowd as like the counterpoint to what you're saying. So the closer that you can mimic that environment of them sitting with a friend is always going to be powerful, I think.
yeah, I can't remember who said it, but there was some comic that said it's more of a dialogue than a monologue, and it makes total sense. While the audience is not shouting things back, it's a give and take of emotions, laughter, that kind of thing. So what's your worst experience in comedy? Because much like Kill Tony, people love to see people fail,
Yeah.
sometimes more than succeed. And I've talked about some of my experiences that didn't go well in the world of stand up. Most of it happening early on in my stand up. But what is your worst experience, and something that you maybe just couldn't recover from? Maybe there's more than one. I don't know.
Yeah, there are more than one, so I'll give you the
There
menu.
has to be more than one.
There's so many, and they're always coming, and they always will. I think it's just at different stages. Like I definitely have that story similar to what you're talking about, where I did an open mic and was so late in the lineup that there were zero people there when I got up at the end, and just sort of maybe a couple people would poke their heads in from closing out their tab in the other room, but it was literally to 0 people. So that was pretty rough,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're doing mics to try to get better. But in hindsight, those are the experiences that do make you better because it forces you to know that there's going to be bad times. So that was
Mm-hmm.
probably the worst early one. And then I think there's the other two that I can think of is there's one that should have gone better that didn't, and then one that I was just set up to just completely fail, and there's nothing I could do about it. So the one that should have gone better was just and was a real learning experience for me. I headlined a room in like the Albany area 2 or 3 years ago, maybe three at this point, and it was a dinner show where there were two. There was an early dinner and there was a late one, and they started it really early for the dinner and drinks. So every crowd was like 2 hours in on drinking before it started. And the first one
Mm.
went well. I had to do an hour. First one went well enough. And then the second one, they'd been drinking maybe 2.5, 3 hours for the late show. And it was just one of those things where, similar to you said earlier, people are expecting a certain thing. I think they
Mm-hmm.
were expecting a certain type of like road right wing kind of comic like in those
Oh.
pockets of Albany, like they it's definitely more purple than our area, which is fine. I mean, I think like it taught me that like you have to have an act that for some rooms you have to be able to play those rooms and pick your material wisely, but they were very antagonistic, and
Mm.
it was surprising because I don't know if you know Dan Guerin, who's a really great
Yeah.
out of Albany. He was featuring and murdered, like did so well. And so I just walked in being like, oh, good. It's like a super fun crowd. Like it's going to continue on. And
Yeah.
the change in energy was like immediate. Some guy, like some drunk guy grabbed the mic and like tried to yell into it like within the first 30 seconds. And then they were like, they hated the fact that I was Jewish. They hated like one of my like weed jokes. So like
What?
the only jokes that got laughs were things like, "Oh well, if you kill me, it's fine because they don't like Jews here," and they'd like laugh at that. I'd be like, "It wouldn't even make the news if like a Jew went missing in this town." Like those were like literally the
Oh my
types of jokes
God.
that were like
I s-
doing well.
my
Um,
mouth is open for the people who can't see it right now. I'm just like,
yeah,
oh my God.
and then
Oh my
and
God.
then it ended with the host coming back and saying, "Comedy's not easy, folks."
Oh my God.
And this is also someone who had just booked me to do like 3 shows, and this was the first one. So I was
So,
like, ugh, like
and you had to do an hour each two.
I
So you
had to
had
do. Yeah, it was. That's another. I mean, some people just that's just the contract they make with these venues or
Mhm.
whatever. The show has to be a certain amount of time. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Dan did 30, and then I did an hour, and I think the host was doing 20 or so up top. So it was a long hour.
Wow.
As you know from my shows, I try to keep it at like 70, 75 minutes.
Yeah. And that's important too because I've been to open mics early in my career that were like 3 hours long, and I had people come out to see me just do an open mic, and I was like, I'm sorry
Yeah,
that was so damn long. But
yeah.
I've been on shows where the headliner did, 45 minutes would have been perfect, but they did an hour 10, and it was too much.
Too
You know
much,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Totally. But, I mean, I don't, I do put a lot of blame on myself for that because, and what I learned from it is that when you do some of these shows, you can get to a point, if you're like Lewis Black or like, there's comics where it's like they just know they can perform to a certain kind of audience,
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
material that they are most excited about. But if you're not at that level of your career and haven't built a like niche audience like that, you have to understand that like the audience kind of mimics the political climate. So like if I go in there and talk about how I don't want to have kids and how I'm like not their religion, or if I talk about like all the things that anger like certain like
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
different people from me,
Yeah.
it's just not going to work. So it did help me to sort of tailor. The next time I did one of his shows, I stayed away from the Jewish references. I stayed away from the weed references. Like I intentionally kind of played it more safe, which some comics might say is like a bad thing to do because you're compromising like your thing, but I wanted to make sure that that crowd had, enjoyed the jokes. I'm not going to like inflict stuff that I just have proven to not work well in that area. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and I find that here too. I mean, I tell comics like headliners that aren't from here when they come to certain rooms, like especially like in Adams, I say like, "Welcome to Ohio." Like this is like you are in
Yeah.
Ohio right now. Like it's a great mix of people, and it's much different probably than New York City where you just were.
What was that last part? It cut out for some reason.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying,
In
it's Welcome to
in New
Ohio.
York City.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, 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 yeah.
much different from New York City where you just were before, and this is very much a road gig, in the way that you should think about it.
A long time ago, I did when I did stand up in New York City. I remember doing some of the stuff that does well around here, a lot of the small town stuff,
Yeah,
and that did not go over well in a New York City crowd, and that was a good learning experience for me. Whereas, there were certain jokes obviously that would kill in this area, and they weren't about local things. They were just like about small town stuff, and that
sure.
did obviously not go over well in New York City. Um, I did a show in Albany once. It was at the Waterworks. Do you know the Waterworks in Albany?
No.
It's a gay bar, but they had a show. They had a performance space upstairs, and I remember like there were this was a weird experience for me. It just made me think of your story. So I there were two shows. They said there's going to be two shows, and where you have some, I don't know, it was me and four other comics. And I remember after the first show, my impression was that there was going to be a whole new crowd. They told me that they were going to bring in a whole new crowd for the second show. They didn't, and I didn't really have any new stuff to tell for this second show.
Sure.
So some people left, and a few new people trickled in. So I was like, I got to come up with new material in like 20 minutes now.
Yeah.
So that was just something from talking about your days in Albany. But that's where I got a lot of my start, was over in Albany. They were really great to me going over there. There was a couple places that had a regular open mic every month we would go to. And because this kind of segues into my next point of conversation here, where there really wasn't a lot for open mics in this area. This was something I talked about with Seth. We've had so many different open mics pop up over the years, and excuse me. But in terms of how you try out new material, what does that look like for you in trying out new material? Is it some of it done in a live space, or is it some of it done online? With other comics.
Yeah, it's all the above. So I used to run, it started in COVID. I used to run like a weekly Zoom mic, which I think we talked about maybe in the past a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
where we would just come and bring stuff, and that was great. But everyone's lives got way too busy. It was hard to commit to doing it every week. So it lasted several years, though. It lasted maybe close to 4 or 5 years. And then stopped that somewhat recently, but I just also have a lot of comics that I'll just run stuff with on the phone or Zooms periodically. We'll just kick things back and forth kind of when we have time, and that's super helpful. And then
Mm-hmm.
I also think that you just have to think a lot of it through on the page. I know a lot of people write on stage or don't like to write their stuff down, but I'm definitely the kind of comic that tries to wordsmith everything and try to cut the fat before I even try it the first time. And it doesn't mean that the stuff will work the first time, but it
Oh,
puts
yeah.
best possible place. And then because I'm hosting these shows, it's just a really it's a good opportunity to try the stuff and just slowly work through the list of things I want to put in. And then if I'm headlining somewhere not in this area, I can try 4 or 5 new things in the 45 minutes and that I know work. So it's like very low stakes in terms of working in that new stuff. And then with social
Mm-hmm.
media, sometimes I'll post a joke like on Threads, or I'll do like a real version of an idea. And if it does well, you have that social proof that the joke will probably do well as a stand-up piece. So sometimes I'll kind of take something that was originally on Facebook or some other medium and
Hmm.
try it live. So those are kind of the ways that I have been doing it. But I have found that like doing stand up for so long, you fail a little quicker with the working of the new stuff. Like it's pretty rare. It's while it's rare that a new thing like absolutely destroys the first time I do it, like it's getting more rare that like some part of a new joke doesn't have promise when I'm confident enough to bring it to a show.
Hmm.
Um,
I think people don't realize how long it takes for a joke to get from point A to B, from where it's like you think about it and then it finally is ready to be put out there. And even jokes that I've done for years and years, they kind of morph along the way because you're always maybe picking up a new word or a new part to it. Do you find that as well with some of your material?
Yeah, absolutely. And you hear comics complain about coming up with a tag for something that they just recorded on a special or whatever, and it's like too late to. I mean, I think every joke has a potential of like never being finished if you can keep coming up
Yeah.
with things to change about it, and also like we talked about adding those like physical moments or emotional valleys to something or voicing of something in a different way to get a better pop. So much of it is the delivery and the sort of less verbal elements of it. So I think it's always kind of a work in progress. But the more you do it, the pacing and the delivery I think is like the big thing that helps a joke over time. Then you sort of milk those moments that you can pause for more effect or like say something a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think initially, you come up, you have the words, and the words are there, but then the pacing and the timing, the rhythm, um, all of that can completely turn those words into something completely different. Um, when I wanted to ask you about, when you're looking for talent for your shows, what are some of the things that you're looking for when you're wanting to book someone? Because I've realized, and this is with regards to music, when I'm looking for
Yeah.
people that to play music with, I've realized that at this point in my life, talent comes like third, and the first two are are you reliable, and do you have transportation?
Yeah.
And talent sometimes is third on that list. So, what are some of the things that you look for when you're booking a comedian?
Well, I wish I thought a little bit more about reliability and transportation because I've definitely had a couple comics that like 3 days before the show, they're like, North Adams is where compared to where I live? Like, oh, you know what? It's not worth it to me to come from. Like, I had a comic just
Oh
be
my
like,
god.
I don't have a dog sitter and I'd lose money coming. And I was like, okay. Um, but so I will say, I kind of learned the hard way that way. And then I won't book that person again just because it's like, ugh, that was a bummer that they kind of made me like scramble at the last minute. But so I do prioritize talent for better or worse. And then I also just like prioritize my own personal taste. And I don't say that like in a narcissistic way. I just say it and like I have to think that they're funny
Sure.
to feel good about putting them on the show. And also like I have to like especially now that I'm because of like the economy and stuff, it's been hard to run as many shows, so I have to run kind of fewer shows, and most of them are at Bright Ideas in terms of the small shows. And there was a time where like I would say this person's a better fit for like Bounty Fair than Bright Ideas or
Sure.
things like that. So trying to look at their material in a way of like I want to make sure I'm setting them up for success, but also making sure it's hard with these little shows because and that's what's nice about the Adams Theater is like the Adams Theater I can bring people who are regulars at the Comedy Cellar and we pay them like a pretty decent night's rate to do that theater that I could never afford for the small show. So like
Yeah.
with the small show, it's almost like minor league baseball. It's like I'm looking for these comics that are like about to pop and are hilarious, but are
Yeah.
willing to come and drive 3.5 hours. Like they don't do 45 minutes all the time. They're mostly doing showcase spots in the city. So it's
Yeah.
like it's nice for them to come and stretch their legs and sort of see where their headlining set is at and to be willing to do it for like a free hotel room and
Yeah.
an okay rate, but it's definitely that sweet spot. I feel like I'm always scouting because there's a lot of people where I just catch them too late. I try to book them and they refer me to their manager, and then it ends there because
Uh,
I ask for like 4 times what I make on the night.
yeah. Well, what you described kind of sounds like pretty much all of my time in playing punk rock for the last 25 years, driving a
Yeah.
long distance for very little money, and and driving home, not even getting a room. So that's funny. Um,
Yeah, but because I've been doing comedy so long, that's the easiest part is the talent part because a lot of these people are just my friends or people that I've performed with and enjoyed. So I don't have to put as much thought into. I have a longer list of people I'd like to book than shows I have spots for.
sure.
So that's like it's not a problem, which is nice with the
Hmm.
limited amount of shows.
Nice. Um, what are some of your favorite places that you've played? Doesn't have to be around here, but what are some of your best places that you've played?
Well, I mean, I will say Bright Ideas and Bounty Fair have had some great memories just because they were fun rooms
Hmm.
and the crowds are really there to have a good time. But in terms of like highlights, last year I performed at the Villages in Florida, which is like that infamous retirement community in Florida where there's like a lot of like promiscuity amongst the like 55 plus people. It's like if you looked it up, it's
Okay.
outside Orlando. It's a funny, strange place, but they have a really nice theater there. My dad and I had a fun night there leading up to like our album recording. So that was like a definitely a highlight. In
Was the
terms,
was the audience like people from this
oh
home?
yeah, they
Yeah.
all live there. They all yeah, and
Yeah.
my dad's like perfect for that demographic because he's also like a baby boomer, and
Oh
there were
yeah.
shows he worked on and stuff like that. So it was a good fit for the show that we do. But in terms of like best places, I mean, I think like the hottest rooms have usually just been like that special combination of like it's set up right and the lineup's good. So by the time I get up, it's like it's a really well sort of tuned instrument of an audience. And
Hmm.
um, I got to perform at Comedy Works a couple times in Denver when I was out in Colorado, and that's like a really special club and a really hot room.
Hmm.
So that is a fun spot. But I mean, some of the best sets I've had in recent memory have been a Bright Ideas. There's something about the room and the like people who show up that it does feel like the ideal environment to do stand up in.
It's very intimate. Obviously, you wouldn't think it would work right away, given that like the bar is right there. But the way that you run it, it's everyone is there to see comedy. From my experience, they knew what to expect, but it was just run really well. And yeah, no, some of the best rooms that I've had and experiences. Again, people are there to see comedy. It's
Yeah.
not surprise comedy like Seth and I talked about. It's not like we're going out and all of a sudden, oh look, a comedian. You know.
Exactly. And that was the last example I'll quickly just tell you was a couple years ago I was hired to do a holiday party up in way deep in Vermont for like a construction company and as like a thank you to the staff, and they did not really tell the staff that there was going to be comedy, and they
Oh
didn't
God.
put it in a separate room, and the
Uh,
minute I was supposed to again do like 45 minutes or so, and the minute I started they all turned their heads and went to the bar and started talking to each other and
oh
treated
my
it like it was like
God.
jazz music night. And I think I did 45 minutes in about 29 minutes, and I just got my check and I drove home like as like expeditiously as possible.
Just defeated. Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
get it.
but it was another, that it was another reminder that you have to advance the show, and it's your responsibility. And if you don't have a representative, I mean, I have, some people that represent me in certain capacities, and uh, when I've had that, they're the ones that will iron out those details. But if you're doing it yourself, you really have to have that checklist of like, how's the room gonna look,
Yeah.
how, are they gonna, is it gonna, they know there's a show, the people that don't want to be there are gonna go to a different part of the event center, like all these things that
Yeah.
I didn't expect. So it was kind of on me.
There's so much of that stuff that business owners and restaurant owners and club owners and promoters, whoever, just have no clue about. I remember being approached by someone who had a restaurant, a local restaurant, and they were doing music. They were doing I don't know, bingo, and he had overheard me talking to a friend about a show that I'd had, a comedy show, and so he approached me and he was really aggressive with trying to get me to come down, and I just explained to him that the way it's set up is not going to really work for comedy, because it was going to be pretty much right near in between. I imagine I'd be standing in between the dartboard and the Big Buck Hunter arcade machine, next to the bar, and and then there was basically a restaurant, and I just said, I don't think it's going to work. And it was like he was selling me like a timeshare. He's like, okay, well, just have some time to think about it. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, no, like,
Yeah.
no, just stop. It just was not going to work, and I didn't have a good feeling about it. Didn't
Yeah.
have a,
No, you should trust your instincts on that, and that sounds like a nightmare. And I think I've gotten to the point where I was at a point a couple years ago where my mentality was kind of like, I'll try anything one time just for the experience and maybe we'll get some material out of it. But then now I'm more like, I'm gonna be 42 years old in a couple days. Like, I'm done doing
I
what I
ain't got
know
time for that.
will fail. Like, this sounds messed up, but like, nursing homes. I frequently get people reach out to do a nursing home, and it's always like
Really?
Tuesday at 1 o'clock, and they'll say their budget is like $300, and then you'll go down the road with them, and then suddenly their budget's like $200, and then like you start thinking about like, do I want to drive 2 hours to do this very,
So
and
they're not even local. You have
they're
this
not even
hours
local.
away.
They're usually hours away, and it's just you have to bring all the equipment. But I mean, this is messed up. This is messed up. A joke I told my dad that he loved is like, it would be an easy gig because you just do the same 5 minutes 12 times.
Same time.
But
Yeah. Well, that's we would do that with a band that we had. We would play for 3 hours, and we would play some of the stuff we played in the beginning at the end, because some of the people that were there at the beginning had left, and new people had showed up. So by the time that 3 hours went by, we just do it again.
that's so
But
fun.
I mean, I have friends that are musicians that have played for nursing homes. But again, music is not comedy. It's not that dialogue that you need. So, so can you tell people at home where they can see you, and where you've well, we talked about some of the shows that you've done, but tell people about where they can see you here in the Berkshires and beyond, what you have coming up.
Yeah, for sure. So they can see me. So my website is charlienadler.com, and all my upcoming shows are listed there. They can follow me at Charlie Go Nadler on most platforms. Pop-up punchlines is like kind of the DBA I use for my shows around here. So they can also look up pop-up punchlines for comedy shows in the area, but it's all stuff listed on my website as well. The next scheduled stuff we have coming up, we have July 25th, Winston Hodges is going to be at the Adams Theater, and he's from Funny AF with Kevin Hart. He made it super far in that show. He's great. He's a friend of mine. Super pumped to have him here. We have a couple other great shows at the Adams Theater in September and October. You can go to their website, adamstheater.org, to get tickets to all of those. And then August 8th at Door Prize Restaurant in North Adams is the
Nice.
next Adams show. It's a special show at Door Prize. There is a mocha show that night, so Door Prize was super generous to collaborate with me at their location for that date. And then, yeah, Bright Ideas is every couple of months. The next one will be in October there, and then December after that. That's the main kind of Berkshires small show venue coming up. And then regionally, I'm going to be in the Saratoga Comedy Festival, which is the weekend of September
Nice.
11th and 12th.
Nice.
So that'll be fun. A lot of my friends from the Albany area are on that one.
Where's that specifically in Saratoga?
Yeah, it's in Saratoga. It's at, I think, there's like a big convention type place there. I think it's if you have show notes, I think it's just saratogacomedyfestival.com, and
Okay.
info there to get tickets. So yeah, no, it's a good scene, and I feel like I'm bummed. I feel like I missed out on the North Adams scene when I hear you and Seth and others talk about sort of the community back in the day. There isn't, they really don't. There isn't that kind of like a, open mic kind of scene like there used to be.
It was difficult, obviously, in that they would, pop up and then die down, and you'd have a mic for 9 months to a year or so. But the alley in North Adams was the very first place that I got my start, and it was on Eagle Street, and I think it was in where Desperados used to be.
I don't know. It was like an upstairs room or something.
It was upstairs room. It was great,
Yeah.
and I remember the first year or so was a packed house every single night, and a lot of the comedians were Albany comics. They would come over, and that's where I kind of got hooked up with them. And this was during a time when it was just my wife and I. We didn't have children yet, so I'm like, hey, I'm going to go over to Albany on a Wednesday night and do comedy because I got the time. So that was great. Seth had put together some open mics. We had one at Public Eat and Drink once in the second little dining room there, which was
nice
good.
spot.
Yeah, it was good. The Purple Pub in Williamstown, the Parlor Cafe across from MCLA. I don't think anything's there right now at all, but
I don't think so. But I went to the Parlor at the very end. That's where I first met Seth, and that was a hilarious time because I just went to check it out, and then Seth asked me if I could give him a ride home after the show, and because I'm so neurotic and because I didn't know him, I was worried that he was going to say he lived in like Pittsfield or something, and I didn't want to give him a ride far. So then I asked him where he lived, and as he started to tell me where he lived, I kept asking more and more specific questions and like freaked him out more and more until like we realized that we were neighbors. Like I live like 10 houses down from Seth.
Wow.
So it was like a really funny thing where it was like it started out with me not wanting to give him a ride and ended with him not wanting to accept a ride.
I'm not going to murder you in your car on the way home. Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah.
I've given Seth many a ride, and I know he's someone that gets. I remember we drove up to Vermont one time, and he gets very car sick, and he had his head out the window most of the time, like a puppy coming home from the pound, because he was nervous about throwing up in the car, just trying to get fresh air.
Yeah, he's the best.
So, well, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and I'm always fascinated with just how like the inner workings of these shows go, and I appreciate you sort of shedding light on some of these things that hopefully maybe if someone is listening that's a restaurant owner or promoter, they can gain some insight as to how a successful comedy show is run.
Yeah, there's one thing to take away. It's the chairs.
Yeah, and you got to put tennis balls on the bottom of them, right? Just so they, just
exactly,
just like in a public school.
Walkers, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think this will go out maybe in a couple of weeks.
Great.
And but I'll let you know, and we'll go from there. But thank you for taking this time to do that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, man. This was fun. It was good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll touch base soon.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one. Yeah, you too.
Bye.